come to today, towards the end, will sound to many people absolutely fantastic. But so many things that I've written over the last nearly 30 years that were called fantastic and ridiculous and out there have actually turned out to be true. And what I'm going to say today is equally true. Because there is an agenda for the world across multiple areas of human society, which, if you can access it, makes it not easy, but relatively comfortable in predicting the future. Because if there's an agenda for the world and there is not an intervention to stop it, then it will happen. So if you can access what the plan is, then you can predict the future unless there's an intervention to stop it. And there needs to be, and urgently, not least on the subjects I'm talking about today. I'm going to look at, if you like, different dots, first of all, relating to the same subject. And then I'll come to the conclusions that I came to a long time ago and have detailed at length in the books towards the end. And I'm going to start with a news story from this week. Gender-bending chemicals, plastics, from plastics, have been found in 86% of teenagers. Almost 90% of teenagers have gender-bending chemicals from plastic in their bodies, according to a study. Bisphenol A, known as BPA, is found in plastic containers and water bottles, on the inside of food cans, and even in till receipts. So every time you're in a shop or a store and they give you a receipt, you're taking this chemical in. The chemical, used since the 1960s to make certain types of plastic, mimics the female sex hormone estrogen and has been linked to low sperm counts and infertility in men, of which more later, as well as breast and prostate cancer, which of course have gone through the frickin' roof in recent times. A study by the University of Exeter, whose researchers tested urine samples from 94 teenagers, found 86% had traces of BPA in their body. Experts fear it is all but impossible to avoid the chemical, given the widespread use of plastic packaging for food. Now, when you look elsewhere at where this BPA is, you've got a choice, really, although both choices are true in a way. You can say that putting these chemicals in that affect health and specifically affect gender development is just a big, massive error. And of course, at the lower levels of this story, where people actually just do their job, then they will not have any clue what the real agenda is. So you can say, yeah, it's just an agenda, it's just being stupid. People don't really realize what they're doing. But you go deep in the shadows where all this is ultimately coming from, and they know exactly what they're doing. They are changing the gender of human beings for reasons I'll come to. Another part of this story goes on. Researchers surmise that people all over the world of all ages are likely to have a measurable amount of BPA in their blood, urine, or body tissue. Several government studies have detected BPA in large portions of the population, including 93% of the US population aged 6 and older, and 99% of the population of Germany aged 3 to 14. This new study into the high number of teenagers with BPA in their digestive system serves only to underscore that concern. So, at the same time that people, particularly as we see young people, are being infused, deluged with these gender manipulating chemicals, in the same period we have had this explosion of propaganda relating to changing gender, fusing gender, transgender, which when it all began, indeed still today, although it's changing, bore absolutely no resemblance to the number of people who were considering what gender they were, rather than saying, I'm a man, I'm a woman. And so we're again asked to believe, in our apparent terminal naivety, that all the propaganda about gender, particularly aimed at who? Aimed at the young, is just a coincidence when it's happening at the same time as these gender-bending chemicals are being tidal waved across human society. And of course, this whole extremism with regard to transgender, I'm not talking about those that genuinely are questioning their gender. I mean, it's their body, their choice. They should be supported. I'm talking about the fact that the way this transgender propaganda is so stunningly over the top always tells you that there is an agenda behind it. When something comes out of nowhere and is suddenly everywhere, which is what has happened here, it's the agenda pressing a button on the next stage. And here's just an example of what I'm talking about from this week. Censor courses in case they're transphobic, lecturers told. Universities are ordering academics to delete all material from their courses which could be considered transphobic in a drive to appease equality campaigners. Not, note, to appease the general population, who see all this in completely different terms, to appease the campaigners who dominate the microphones and the debate. At least a dozen institutions have issued guidance to professors and lecturers stating that classes must not contain material which is discriminatory to transgender people, those who identify as another sex to the one they were born. Data published today lays bare the extent to which academics' speech is being restricted on transgender issues in a potential breach of the law on academic freedom. That went out the window a long time ago. Almost half of universities now have policies in place which regulate speech on the topic. Last year, the proportion was a third. One institution, City University London, has even banned lecturers from using terms such as mate. Crikey, I call everyone mate, so I'm in trouble, am I? Don't care. Guys, sir, or madam, because it might upset transgender students. And of course, the number of transgender students is tiny and out of all proportion with the propaganda and the imposition of speech and other regulations and laws relating to the rest of the population. But of course, the number of people questioning their gender is increasing. and it's increasing rapidly in the same period as this BPA explosion and the propaganda explosion, which is what? Which is encouraging people, particularly young people, to question their gender who weren't questioning it before. So this is not about, forget the stuff about, this is about protecting transgender people. I'm against discrimination of any kind. It's ludicrous, it's childlike. But this is not about that. That's the excuse. The reason is a much bigger, massive picture relating to transforming the nature of the human race. Now, in my book, new book, Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, I go into these subjects and many others in great detail. And I'm just going to go through a few bits that are in the book relating to this subject. First of all, as I say, because of this transgender propaganda explosion, more and more people, particularly the young, are questioning their gender. Cause and effect? Of course it is. And here we have an example. Highgate School in London, which cost nearly £7,000 a term, said it was considering allowing boys to wear skirts because growing numbers of children are questioning their gender. See earlier for why. And, quote, the binary way people look at things. Well, why do we think this could be? You know, cause and effect, it's obvious. So, as I say in the book, put these two sentences together by the school head teacher, Adam Pettit, and what is happening is clear to see. Statement number one, he said, in common with all other schools and youth organisations, we are seeing greater numbers of pupils questioning gender identity than in the past. Brackets, see earlier for why. Statement two, having said that, in years gone by, absolutely no young people were raising it at all, and it seems inconceivable that these sorts of questions simply didn't exist. No, it doesn't. They may have existed among some people, but in vastly fewer numbers than now. What is happening, and the reason for this sudden change and transformation, is because of the propaganda, and I would strongly suggest because of the chemicals that are deluging and dousing the human race day after day. The American College of Pediatricians reported that children are being indoctrinated to reassess their gender with reckless, profit-driven doctors prescribing sex change hormones to children as young as 12. And it condemned this as child abuse, but it's not ultimately about the money. It's about the bigger agenda, which I'll come to. Now, something else I go into in the book relating to this, which is, again, fundamental to understanding current events. And that's the fact that testosterone levels in men and women is falling. And you see, people think testosterone, they think men, but women have testosterone. Not in the same levels, of course, but they have it. And if the levels are too low, both sexes can suffer from fatigue and exhaustion, weight gain, mood swings, depression, and anxiety. Testosterone in men stimulates the sex drive and sperm production. Something else I'm going to come to in a second. Sperm counts have been falling dramatically due to chemicals in food and drink and the impact of massively increased radiation, especially Wi-Fi, and of course the phone in the pocket. And a study has found that 59.3%, a decline of 59.3% in total sperm count in men from North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Studies involving large numbers in Spain found that sperm counts had fallen by 38% in 10 years. And a mainstream media report said the reproductive health of the average male is in sharp decline. The world's largest study of quality and concentration of sperm has found testicular cancer rates have also doubled in 30 years. Richard Sharp, Professor of Reproductive Health at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland and recognised expert on toxins in the environment, said this about falling sperm counts. Now, there is little doubt that it is real. So it is time for action. Something in our modern lifestyle, diet, or environment is causing this, and it's getting progressively worse. 38% in 10 years, how much more progressively worse can it get? We still don't know which are the most important factors. But of course, things like BPA and so many other things are absolutely there. Up to a fifth of young men now have a low sperm count, and alarm bells have been sounding since 1992 when Danish research revealed that the number of sperm in each milliliter of semen had halved since World War II, with abnormal sperm on the rise. And a French study of 26,600 healthy men confirmed a substantial decline in sperm counts between 1989 and 2005. And it's therefore everywhere, because this stuff, not least, is everywhere, and the other factors that are suppressing sperm production are increasingly everywhere. Now, at the same time, these chemicals are affecting gender. We have all the propaganda about transgender. And at the same time, testosterone levels in men and sperm counts are falling. We have this propaganda war against men, particularly white men, it seems to me. Another coincidence? Another no chance. And this whole testosterone area has many implications. Here's another one. People have noted how we are creating so many young people who've become known as snowflakes, what I call Generation Jelly. That's not all young people. Lots of young people are seeing through the crap, and good on them. It's amazing they do, given the propaganda they're deluged with every day. But many are falling for it and becoming Generation Jelly, where everything is, I might be triggered. I need a safe space. Don't say anything I don't agree with. I'll be offended. Well, testosterone is often associated with aggressive and dominating males. Yeah, so they go, oh, testosterone man. Yeah. But that's not the only expression of testosterone. The same hormonal effect can be channeled by the mind into the need to protect others and to stand up and be counted against injustice and unfairness and agendas for humanity. See, they want a weak, subservient population, and deleting testosterone levels is massively applicable to that and why they're doing it. This testosterone effect can be described as acting like a man, but like I say, there are many ways that can express itself. And females, of course, their testosterone levels, when they fall, also are affected by this stand up and be counted effect. And so what we're witnessing with Generation Jelly, the politically correct snowflakes, it's more and more obvious that we are seeing increasing examples of this reduction in the, quote, male aspects in both men and women, and it becomes the prevailing norm. In fact, this week, there was this headline: Snowflake soldiers on the march. Grenadier guards are being given kung fu classes because they're not aggressive enough. Of all the qualities a soldier needs, you'd imagine that being a fearless hand-to-hand fighter might come top of the list, the story says. Worryingly, though, some British squaddies appear to have lost their killer instinct. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like I say, there are other aspects of this, like standing up and be counted in a non-violent way. In fact, the Grenadier Guards have been forced to take martial arts classes because they are not aggressive enough. It emerged last night. All these dots connect, ultimately. Now, another area connected to this, which I go into in the book, is that alongside falling testosterone levels and sperm counts, we've got a global fall in male birth rates. It's not devastating to the male population yet, but it's incessant, and it's pretty much global again. And Dr. Devra Davis, president of the Environmental Health Trust and a lead author of a report into this very subject, said, it's important to look at the really big picture here. It always is. The only way you see what's really going on, which is that there are global indications, she says, that something unusual is going on. Hallelujah to that. And this is part of this multifaceted attack on the male and male hormone, and it's connected to an ever-increasing psychological and politically correct attack on the male in general, and the white male, it seems, from what I can see, in particular. And another aspect of this whole effect is something called endocrine disrupting chemicals. They're known as EDCs. Synthetic they are. Synthetic is a very relevant word to where this is supposed to go. And they disrupt the endocrine system of glands, which include the glands of the pineal gland, for instance. That is part of this so-called third eye mechanism, where you can see beyond the five senses into other levels of reality, or at least sense them. And ECDs are found in plastics, food containers, and packaging, canned food, drinks, electrics, solvents, cleaning products, detergents, pesticides, cosmetics, soaps, car exhaust, polish, paints, batteries, dental fillings, mercury, and many types of fish, including swordfish. And herbicides and pesticides sprayed on farms, parks, and golf courses can be added to this in terms of the effect that we're talking about. And atrazine, one of the world's most used pesticides, is changing the sex of male frogs and making them infertile. We're seeing fish in the rivers changing sex because of the chemicals in the rivers that have come from human society. Another coincidence. Another you must be joking. And researchers at a university in China found that a much used endocrine disrupting pesticide with residues found in milk, baby food, and vegetables is speeding the onset of puberty in boys and leading to earlier sexual maturity, which can have health and psychological impacts in adult life. EDCs and the female sex hormone estrogen can be found in unfiltered tap water along with other EDC chemicals. And some believe, I suggest they are correct, that this chemical onslaught is affecting and sabotaging potentially male fetuses at critical periods of development, and so turning them into girls while also lowering men's sperm counts and testosterone levels. Synthetic endocrine disruptions, as I say in the book, are really a one-stop shop for all that is in male decline, and they're going to realize eventually that this explosion, this relentless rise in prostate cancer in men is also connected to all this. Another area that Dr. Deborah Davis highlighted is the dangers of 5G Wi-Fi, which they're now starting to bring in America, and they want to bring in everywhere. This is a cumulatively lethal radiation frequency to become the new Wi-Fi communication system, 5G. It's absolutely lethal, not just to body, but also to mind. Again, as I go into and expose in detail in the book. And Dr. Davis points out that fast dividing cells producing sexual organs are very open to incorporate and replicate errors that can lead to changing once developing boys into girls. Whenever biochemical processes are involved, clearly any chemical disturbance becomes significant and can surely feminize even those people who still emerge from the womb as apparently male. Dr. Melody Millam Potter, an American clinical health psychologist for 30 years, wrote the following in an article, excellent article, at greenmedinfo.com. Synthetic chemicals can create these silent switches in nature's plan. ECDs we encounter every day can alter the sex hormone balance, preventing male genitals from growing properly. By suppressing testosterone or by enhancing or mimicking the female sex hormone estrogen, they can undermine the natural testosterone messages surging through a growing fetus. For instance, estrogen mimics things such as dioxin, a widespread pollutant and potent endocrine disruptor, hormonal disruptor, can intercept and overcome a hormonal message from a male gene. Dioxin also acts as a testosterone flusher, reducing male hormone concentration so much that the male action may not be stimulated adequately. Testosterone suppressors like DDT can block testosterone's position on a receptor. Hormone stimulators can intensify the action of a natural hormone so much that the system shuts down and refuses to receive a male go-ahead signal. In fact, research, she says, substantiates that exposure to EDCs at a crucial time can disrupt the entire genital sequence. And as I say in the book, in the 7 years after a chemical explosion contaminated the small community of Seveso in northern Italy, twice as many girls were born. Parents with the highest levels of chemicals in their blood had no male children at all. Fertility rates in general fell dramatically. Now, studies claim that the number of people identifying as gay or LGBT is rapidly increasing to the extent that one study in the US estimated that those born before and across the millennium to be nearly twice as likely to identify as LGBT as other American adults. Quote, millennials are the gayest generation, quote, as one headline put it. Are we really saying, I ask in the book, that none of this is connected to the chemical environment we are now subjected to and its gender-bending toxicity? And then I quote in that book and in the previous book, Phantom Self, a man called Dr. Richard Day, who was a Rockefeller family insider, was an executive of Planned Parenthood, and let's say knew what the agenda was. And in 1969, he asked a meeting of pediatricians in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to not take notes and to not record what he said, because he was going to tell them how the world was going to change, because what he represented was going to change it. And he then talked about in detail how the world was going to be transformed. And when you read what he said in 1969, and I do detail it at length in Phantom Self, and then you look at what's happening now, it's extraordinary how accurate he was all that time ago. And of course, the same with Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, published in 1932, and George Orwell, 1984, published in 1948, was so accurate in predicting current events. Why? For the same reason I started out saying. If you can access the agenda, or actually be part of the agenda, as in Richard Day's case, then you can predict the future, unless there's an intervention to stop that agenda happening. Anyway, one of the things that Dr. Richard Day told those pediatricians was going to happen when he spoke in 1969 is that they were going to make boys and girls the same. It's everywhere. This is another story from this week. How ibuprofen damages fertility of unborn girls. Women who take ibuprofen in the first 6 months of pregnancy may harm their daughter's future fertility, a study suggests. Scientists found the common painkiller can halve the number of egg cells in girls' ovaries. This suggests girls exposed to this drug in the womb may struggle to have a family as their body makes fewer eggs. Women are born with all the eggs they will ever have, unlike men who increasingly produce sperm. It means females could go through menopause earlier, running out of time to have a child, or struggle with infertility in later life. It comes from all angles, this stuff. So what's it all about? Well, as I've been writing for decades, there is a plan to eventually create a synthetic human. They're already doing it. And they're talking about a synthetic genome and synthetic this and synthetic that, and creating human cells, etc., in laboratories. There is an agenda to replace the current human form with a synthetic version. A synthetic version that would not be male or female and would not have the ability to procreate. The, quote, procreation would be done laboratory style, which is precisely what Aldous Huxley was talking about in his book Brave New World, published, like I say, in 1932, in his World State Hatcheries, where the population was produced through laboratory means, and parents and sex and all that stuff, procreation as we know it, was gone. That's where we're going. That's where we're being taken. And of course, you're being taken there in steps. So the first step that we're seeing now so blatantly is the fusing of the genders and the fusing of the genetic divide and perception of that divide between the genders. And that's part of the big stepping stone towards the point where there are no genders anymore. Just synthetic human, actually connected to AI, which does it thinking for it. That's where we're being taken day by day by day. And the other part of this that's relevant to what I've been talking about is there's a plan for a massive cull of the human population. And what would cull the human population quicker than sperm counts plummeting and plummeting and plummeting and plummeting? and women not being able to have children on the scale they did before. Look at this explosion, again, of fertility clinics because so many couples are struggling to have children. It's all connected, as is the 5G, which is going to have a fantastic, catastrophic, cumulative effect on human health. Again, most probably on human sperm counts, given the effect of radiation on that. And on the human mind and its ability to think clearly. Oh, that's fantastic. It is fantastic. It's absolutely freaking fantastic. It's mind-blowing. But there's something else about it we should think about. It's also